It's the third time. The first time we came, we played at Ziget, and then we recently came earlier this year and played at the Mupa.
Palace of the Arts.
Yeah, that was nice. And so then today on the boat, my musical palette draws from many different experiences. Growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area, mostly in San Francisco, I believe these concepts of nation and concepts of genre separate things that to me feel more whole. So my music is an attempt to find that wholeness away from these ideas of different specific identities. My grandmother was a very strong and creative Indian woman. She was born in the 1930s, and the era that she lived in when she became an adult was during the change where India went from being British colony to independent. Her life, she was a creative woman. She was a singer, she was a musician, and she was a visual artist. But because of where she lived and when she lived, she never had time to pursue those passions.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from her. I speak French, I speak English, I'm learning Spanish, and then Hindi I speak when I'm there. I need to be there for a little while to get it going. It's not very common in the US. Spanish is more common in the US because we have many immigrants from South and Central America and Mexico come from. We went from the coast of the United States, Tijuana, which is the border, all along the border between the US and Mexico to Texas. And during the last 10, 15 years, as trade has become free trade, the NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, there has been increasing poverty in Mexico, increasing malnutrition of children in Mexico, and an increasing workforce of people coming up through the border. And as that has happened, the US is building a more militarized border along both Bush and Obama. It's the same mentality, different face, but the same mentality of building these walls between the United States and Mexico. So we went and we interviewed people on both sides of the border and went to witness ourselves what happens to people when they try to cross a very, very dangerous crossing. So when NAFTA was signed in 1997, the trade with the United States, the Mexican farmers, the peasant farmers, lost the land that was guaranteed to them through the revolution. So the Mexican Revolution ensured that farmers would have access to land to farm for their families. And when the United States signed this agreement with Mexico, the land was gone. So the people are very hungry. So they come hungry to the United States to look for work. I am now, for the last year and a half, I practice medicine for free, and I live off of my music, which means I make very little money, and I give my skill as a doctor for free. In the United States, where medicine is very much a capitalist project, it's a for-profit, people make lots of money off of the business of medicine. For me, it's very difficult as a doctor to be part of a system of medicine where people make so much money off of the suffering of others. So it feels good to practice medicine for free right now. I would wish that we could develop another system of medicine in the United States because we have so much money and so much resource, but it's only in the hands of very few people. And not in the hands of the people who need it. I think my patients inspire me very much. And also, as a doctor, you are a witness to society in a very privileged way. As I practice medicine, I get to see the inequalities of society. I get to see the beauty of society in a very immediate way. So it definitely inspires me. San Francisco attracts people from around the world who are very open-minded, and it also has a history of people who are very close-minded, and these people all live together. And so it's an interesting place. It's a very interesting place. I think what is respected in San Francisco is the ability to speak up and speak out and practice practice engaging in a democratic process. What we witnessed recently with Occupy San Francisco and Occupy Oakland is that when people did go out into the streets now, the response from the police was severe and extreme. And so we in San Francisco are encountering sort of a crisis of identity of what it means to be a freedom fighter in San Francisco right now. It's not the same that it used to be 20 years ago or 30 years ago. We're living under a different political climate that is, it's very concerning. If I'm writing about something that has nothing to do with the police crackdowns around the world, the global uprising around the world, if I write about something very, very tiny and specific that has nothing to do with that, that is a political choice. What we choose to focus on in our art is necessarily either reflecting what we're seeing in the world or not reflecting and not discussing. And those choices, I feel, are political. We are living in a time where I feel it is a duty for artists, not everyone has to do this, but it is a calling to be able to speak to what's happening, because we are living in a time of great abuse of power around the world. And not every artist does it, but I think it's a good task. What is the biggest danger right now? I feel the biggest danger is a social forces that encourage us to ignore our compassion and our empathy. So this right-wing thing is the same thing. And social forces that amplify our greed and our inability to be cooperative with each other. So, and I see it very much related to our economics. So if we look at the economic system we all live under right now, global free market capitalism, and the way people know the price of everything and the value of nothing. People don't know the value of things anymore that used to be very obvious. So the value of having Jewish people in your neighborhood, as well as Hungarian people, as well as African, the value of cooperation. So I feel like all of these things can go under this sort of umbrella of systems that reward us for becoming greedier, becoming more self-centered, more self-absorbed, and not relying on cooperation with each other. And I relate that to a system of economics. So I feel like the more that we as communities and people and artists and taxi drivers and thinkers and hairdressers and interviewers, if everyone could take in their self a sense of how do I cooperate with my community? How do I build another way of doing things? How do I build a new economic model in my own neighborhood? In San Francisco, there are many of us who try to live now without using money. So we trade our work with each other. So a doctor might trade with another person so that money doesn't change our hands, but our sense of indebtedness to each other trades, and we create social ties that are different, and they're not based on financial ties. And so it's, we need creative experiments like this right now, because what we are losing is this empathy with each other. We are losing our compassion. Like what you're saying, the rise of right-wing or hatred, discrimination is a loss of our empathy and compassion and cooperation. I feel it's an example of how corporations, so in the state of the world we live in, which is global free market capitalism, corporations have the rights of people. Only they don't have the rights exactly of people, because if I went into an Armani store and stole a suit and walked out, I would get arrested. Armani can steal my work and not get arrested. And it's because the way our society is structured it gives a free cart. So if Giorgio Armani goes and exploits children in China to make their greater profits to make their clothes, we don't see it. They get to behave like that. If I, as a human being, went and abused some people to get more for myself, I might be arrested. So that corporations act with a certain amount of impunity in our society. And it's not just here, it's all over the world. So now I can write a song in San Francisco and have it stolen in Poland by a company that's based in France. It's demonstrating to me the psychopathology of corporations. And corporations are given the same rights as people in the United States and here in Europe. And so we give these created structures rights and protections, and they behave worse than people are allowed to behave. Mm-hmm. And so to me, it's just an interesting, it makes me angry. A corporation can move an entire village of Indians off their land. A corporation such as Coca-Cola can go into India and drill a hole in the desert deeper than the well that the villagers can dig, and to drain their entire water table and then leave a whole village with no water, so that thousands of people now cannot farm on their land that they lived on for thousands of years because Coca-Cola, one corporation, can come and do that. If I went to that village in India as a person and stole all their water, took all the water, I would be in a criminal court for destroying the lives of an entire village. But Coca-Cola goes to the next village and the next village and the next village. So for me, that song is showing me the same pathology. The vulnerability of a song is the same vulnerability as the water, is the same vulnerability of something that cannot speak for itself. And it's happening again and again and again, and it will happen again and again until people stop and say, stop. And if you look between the years of 1979 and 2005 in the world, the top 1% of people, at least in the United States, had a 200% increase in their income. Everybody else had a 6% increase of their income. So the people who are running these corporations are amassing so much wealth and so much power, and they are making the rules about how these things happen. So I think that it'll require enough people waking up, and not in any violent, massive overhaul, but just enough to say, stop. Like we don't want to participate with that ongoing abuse. What can we do?
Yeah.
I think we can learn from groups that are successful at organizing. There's a group called La Via Campesina, which is the largest human organization on planet Earth. It's a group of organized farmers who are struggling to make land reforms around food in countries all around the world. I think we can learn from groups that are actively participating in democracy, and that doesn't include any countries in the EU, and it does not include the United States. Well, the guys are, the drummer is Aaron Kerbel. He looks Hungarian, but he's not. And then the bass player is Safa Shokray. He's from Iran. He was born in Tehran. He came during the revolution. He came to the United States. The cellist is Misha Kalikulov. He is from Uzbekistan. He was raised there till he was 4 years old, and then came to San Francisco. And then the trumpet player and the man who plays the jug is Mario Alberto Silva, trumpet player. He is from Nicaragua, but he was born in California. So the music, I write the music, I write the lyrics, and then we'll arrange it all together. The song that you're talking about is Build, and for me, that song, I wanted to invoke the feeling of a slave song from the South in the United States. So when the slaves were working in the fields, and later when the prisoners, because most prisoners are of color in the United States, working on the chain, they call them the chain gangs, you hear the sound of the work and the sound of the the rhythm. And I wanted to invoke that feeling of being enslaved, because I see us all as slaves right now. And I see my work as an abolitionist. I feel what I am trying to give voice to is for us to understand our slavery, that we are accepting every time we participate in this system, every time we participate, how we recreate the dynamics of slavery for ourselves. And so that song was trying to invoke that feeling. And when I had a water jug in the studio and I was playing with it one day, it made this very inexact, perfect sound. So that's how I got a water jug. And for me, it also symbolizes the commodification of water, privatizing of the commons, the things that belong to everyone, because we need them to live. If you didn't have access to water, you would die. We require this for life. If we don't have access to food, if we don't have access to clean air, we become sick. And so these things, I believe, have a dignity and freedom of their own that should not be commodified. They become false commodities. Just like me selling my organs. If I were to sell my organ, children are selling their organs in China for iPads. If I were to do that, what are we saying about the dignity? I believe there's a dignity to the body, a dignity to things that belong to life, that have nothing to do with goods and commodities and exchanges. And so I wanted that symbol of the water bottle, because we have grown so used to seeing this water in a bottle. And I feel like we need to unscrew that part of our brain. It's going to be the thing that more people die. The wars that will come for water, and it's already happening, but the wars for water will make the wars for oil look like child's play, because we can live without oil. We cannot live without fresh water. And because so much water has been polluted, we will be in a very, very dangerous place. I was in Paris. I was writing music for 3 days. I wasn't speaking to anyone. I was just writing. And one day I went to a cafe and I sat down, and a very handsome man sat next to me, and we started talking. And he looked at me, and we were speaking in French, and I said, where are you from? He said, I'm from Algeria. And I said, he says, where are you from? I said, oh, I'm from San Francisco. He said, aren't you afraid to be an American in Paris with all these angry Arabs? If you were in my neighborhood, that'd be it. And I looked at him and I said, no, I'm not afraid. There's too much of that. Anyway, I'm not an American, you're not an Arab, we're not in Paris, we're in life. It's these identities, and I understand the hatred. I understand the roots of the hatred, the foreign policy of the United States, the arrogance of the United States, the treachery of the mentality from the United States. I can understand how people would respond like that, but I feel like, again, this is the danger. This is the danger. When we lose our ability to have compassion, when we lose our empathy, and when we lose our desire to cooperate, that's when you can divide people and manipulate. And so that song is about wanting to feel that essential celebration of life rather than division between people. It saddens me a lot. April Fish, Poisson d'Avril, the 1st of April, is the translation from the French for April Fools. And for me, a fool is someone who can speak to power in times of great political craziness. The fool is crazy. They're crazy. So they can say the things that other people might not feel okay to say, and they can say it in a way that is beautiful, happy, silly, funny, playful, imagery of the clown or the fool. Soy payaso. Payaso is clown in Spanish. So that symbol is very important in this particular time. My mother was a concert pianist, so I learned piano when I was little, but I was never very good. And she was patient with me. She did not make any negative comments, but I taught myself guitar and taught myself how to write music and just listened a lot to lots of things. The new album is called Build, and build, as in to make. And it is my wish for myself and for the world to activate our creative potential. Buckminster Fuller, the artist, said that you can't change an existing system by fighting it. I don't have visions of apocalypse or violent upheaval. You're not going to change anything like that. You'll just recreate violence. And what we need to do is build something even better. One day they will look back at us and say how barbaric they were. They would charge money for water. That like one day, my hope is that we will think this way. Like how cruel of people to push people off their land to take the resources from the land instead of living in harmony with that land or with that community of people. So the album Build is a lot about these things that we've been talking about. I don't think you need to destroy them. I think you can just build something better, and it will destroy itself. It will have its thing. I don't think you need to destroy it.